From vinyl music sounds to lively verbal go-arounds.
This is Into the Runout.
I don't know if you guys have done crossover. We did one other crossover a couple of years ago, which was fun. It was actually 3 different podcasts, so that got kind of interesting as people were doing. But this will be fun because Mind Your Business is talking about 2 guys that are entrepreneurial, and we'll get to your side of the pop culture. But introduce yourselves. Who are you, and a little bit about your background. Where are you from, and what do you do?
Who's first?
Why'd you go first,
I'll
John?
go first. I'm John Nelson. Hello, everybody.
And what do you like to do, John?
What do I like to do? Oh, I like to do everything. I love to listen to music, obviously.
Okay.
So that's a good start, and why we're doing our podcast.
And where are you from originally?
Chicago.
Okay. Like
City
born
boy.
and raised? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised South Side guy.
Okay. So you make good choices. We're both White Sox fans, if I remember.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
it's a little sad to say that now.
Yes, although the neighborhood I was from was weirdly all Cubs fans for the most part. Yeah, it's
What?
kind of odd. It was just like this little niche.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now they're there. And so what do you do when you're not doing this?
I'm a kitchen and bath designer.
Okay.
We're commercial and residential design.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, if you add it all up, about 25 years.
Wow.
But I've had my own business for about 6 years now.
Good for you.
So, yeah,
let's
that's what I
plug
do.
that. What's your business name?
That's jcnelsondesign.com.
There you go. Check
That's
them
the
out.
website. And we can give free consultations if you want to
Work
inquire within.
I like that. Gentlemen, to your right.
I am Anthony Nasella, and I too love music. And it was really the whole story of how John and I got together to do this podcast. We met freshman year of high school in Chicago. The neighborhood that John is from is the neighborhood that my father grew up in, and that my mother attended the high school that we eventually attended ourselves. And it was freshman year where we were literally in the same homeroom, me sitting here, John sitting behind me, our last names by this order of the divine set us up this way. And in a matter of a short time, we sprung up a friendship, and we started to talk, and we found we had loads and loads of stuff in common.
Yep.
And one of them was definitely music. Fast forward 39 years later, in a lifetime where John's been married 26 years, I've been married 6. I now live in the northern part of Tennessee. John takes up residence down here in southern Indiana. And I just pitched the idea back in July and with him if he's ever thought about doing a podcast, because I've been told hundreds of times over the years as an Uber driver by my riders about having this unique voice and, I should do podcasts or radio. So I pitched the idea to John, and like a stallion busting out of the stall, he just runs with the idea. He finds a platform. He gives me the specs on the microphone. He comes up with the title, and it's just here we are.
Away we go.
So
Away we go.
Well, I got to ask we got to fill a couple gaps there. So
Yeah, go ahead.
What high school?
St. Francis de Sales.
And who was your mascot?
Our mascot was
Pioneer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were the Pioneer.
We were the Pioneers.
And then where did you guys see? You didn't go to college together, right? You went
No.
different
No,
paths.
we didn't.
So I know you went to Eastern Illinois. Where did you end up going?
I didn't go to
I'm
college.
sorry, I did not know.
I did go for a semester, but
First
then
semester
it
to
wasn't
Robert
for
Morris.
me. Yeah, I went to originally go for architecture, and then I was just like, it's not for me. I'm done with this. And then shortly after, found my wife and just fell into the design business, which was kind of a branch off of architecture, but not as professional.
Sure. And then one last question, though. I know you said Uber driver, but you actually, that's a part-time gig. You just enjoy doing that. What's your full-time position?
Well, my full time I work for an automotive company, so
Okay.
I deliver and pick up automobile parts, used parts, discarded parts, damaged parts, new parts. So just across the board. So I'm all around the Nashville region and sometimes beyond, depending on whether I'm called to go to a customer very suddenly that needs something now.
Wow.
So, and I've been doing that now for a little over 3 years, and it's the main job. Uber's the supplemental job, and and so the idea of doing a podcast, it was like, okay, I think we can wing this, and John's made it so easy. I just get to show up and turn the key and talk. So, and we've had the chance to explore different artists. We've done the Beatles so far. We've done Billy Joel. We've done Queen, Bob Seger, classic albums.
Yep.
We've got a Michael Jackson show that's going to be coming soon.
Nice.
Yeah, we're putting our toes in the water, feeling it out, trying to see what we're going to do. We're going to branch out and do a lot of things here in the near future.
So would you ever move your podcast to an Ubercast? You know, like instead of carpool karaoke, it could be Into the Runout, the Uber experience. And if they answer so many questions right, Into the Runout pays for the ride, and if they don't get it, then it's
Well, hey, if we can get Paul McCartney in the front seat doing carpool karaoke, we will definitely do an Into the Runout. We'll let Paul pick the song and we'll sing right along.
Yeah.
Well, you're lucky. He'll be like, yeah, go pick up Ringo again. He forgot his wallet. We'll go down and to the W Hotel and get him for the show.
Yes,
So,
it don't come easy.
I want to know, so what age did you feel like you really started studying music? I mean, we're always exposed to music in our
That's a good
lives,
question.
but when is it where you're like, okay, I'm going to really read into the lyrics, or I'm going to start looking at the sheet music, or I'm going to start kind of looking at the background of the band?
Well, for me, and I don't mean to cut in.
Oh, no.
So I know
You're
it's your
good.
guys' show right here. So.
You're good. He always diminishes his contributions.
For me, it was the high school years, going to Tony's house, and he had a pretty decent record collection. And I'm going to use a prop here. He would show me the back of the record, not the record itself, and all the liner notes and who worked on the album. And that was like, well, there's more than just listening to music. There's actually studying and learning and who played on a different album. And that's where my growth started, was actually with his record collection.
So is this your freshman year? Are you like 14?
It was a sophomore
15?
year, probably.
Yeah. So about that. So now you've been doing that, we'll call it full time with this, 25 years now, basically, or more, right? In terms
Going
of
on
studying.
40.
39. Yeah, we're going to be 40 next year.
Yeah.
Oh,
40
wow.
years of friendship.
Wow.
John was the best man at my wedding. I stood up in his wedding 26 years ago.
Yep.
You know, we've lived in different parts of the country. I lived in the Carolinas. He lived in Florida. Now I'm in Tennessee. He's in Indiana. So I mean, we've run the gamut of life, and it's been a wild ride.
If you had to give advice to people, like, let's go back, since we're a business podcast, and talk about, between the design and then even the delivery stuff.
Sure.
Like, what do you think the biggest challenge is right now, given just kind of where we are with the economy and kind of with tariffs? And I mean, is it impacting you guys at all, or?
No, because right now, I mean, we're fortunate. The only expense for us is we have to, we pay for just the platform that we record on, and that's it. We've secured enough subscribers where we can do a live one if we chose.
Cool.
And once we get to a certain level, once I think it's like 1,000, then we can finally have some potential profitability. But the part about it is it's like we didn't get into it with the intent to be profitable. We got into it because we absolutely just love music. And I mean, John, gave props to me about, my love for music and understanding the liner notes. And then of course I have to give props to my mom and my dad, whose music collection was my music collection. So there was my mom's Beatle albums, the Beach Boys, Elvis. There was the Righteous Brothers. There was Johnny Rivers. My dad had Jim Croce, Chicago, Barry White. I mean, but in those albums, there was, of course, liner notes too.
Sure.
And as I became much more of a broadened kind of connoisseur of the medium, and because I'm a nerd at heart, like when I get riders in my car who are musicians in Nashville, I turn into the biggest geek in the world because I want to know what their background is, what their inspiration was, who inspired them to play, their process. So, the liner notes just seem a natural progression for me. Yeah. So, because I want to know who's playing on what. Mm-hmm. And so when I get the chance to learn about that stuff, it's like, okay, now I'm listening to the track. Yeah, that's the guitar played by so-and-so. And, that just makes the whole listening process all the more satisfying. And those are the kind of things that I get the chance to, in my nerdom, to be able to share with the population who see fit to take time out of their day to listen to us. So I want to be able to give them, both of us want to give them as much knowledge in our musical repertoire that we can give, such we don't have the freedom with copyright restrictions to play the songs. Sure. So we just talk as much as we can about them.
That's true.
What about you,
That's
John?
true.
What do you think? How is your professional side being impacted kind of by the economy now before we get back to the podcast side?
Yeah, I was going to say professionally, I'm kind of, I don't want to say third party, but I work with contractors and builders. So they feel the tariffs and that sort of thing more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I just fill the gaps with, if they don't have in-house, because I'm 100% remote.
Mm-hmm.
So I fill their gaps of not having in-house staff, or they don't want to have in-house staff. So I provide the design services.
I see.
And then they take that, pass that on to their suppliers, and that they would feel that
pain
effect.
Point too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And the reason why I asked that, I loved your two answers, because that's where I was trying to get to, which is, I'm showing kind of the reality, if you will, of what you have to deal with, almost every day, versus growing a podcast and actually having fun on the side, and I'm glad you touched on it, because a lot of people have spoken to like Wes and I should do when I want to start up, and they don't understand it. It's not just about money per se. There's a lot of energy that goes into it, a lot of research that goes into it, and you don't just show up and go, oh, here's a mic, let's hope for the best.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of cool to hear, because there are podcasts that are being impacted by, I know this is going to make grown people cry. I'm going to say recession, but even software programs are increasing in expense, and editing programs. So I guess my next question for you guys is like, what's that next level? You think that what's happening now will have an impact on what we're trying to do, or not necessarily?
I wouldn't think so. I have an example in my head that just recently happened this past week, where the tariffs did affect me on both ends of the spectrum. I had a client that needed his design done rather quickly, because he's trying to beat the tariffs, trying to order the things. So I had to rush that job while trying to get our last podcast, which comes out on Thursdays, completed. And it was under the wire. I mean, I had it done I think I was up till 2:00 in the morning working on the podcast after working 16 hours that day to get all the designs done. So, just that pressure of beating tariffs at this point is something that's I've been impacted with.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I would say too, in the automotive profession, we certainly, though I don't feel it directly because I'm delivering the parts, but I talk to a lot of body shop owners, a lot of garage owners, and they certainly talk about the challenges of national back orders, because parts are not being shipped as quickly, due to a wide variety of things, tariffs maybe, or maybe just the nature of just manufacturing. I think as more opportunities come to take operations and move them into the United States, where then tariffs become a non-factor, I think that'll certainly work more favorably across the board for all businesses. I know my wife and I were just having a discussion about Temu. Temu actually moved their warehouse from China into the States, and now they're getting back to the business of, or is it Shein? Is Shein Temu one of the ones? Yeah. But they're okay. They're in the States now. No factor for tariffs. Now we can go back to selling things bargain basement price.
Yeah. Well, the other reason why I'm leading us down this path is because we have seen in especially in the podcast industry, we, as in the people who enjoy performing or writing these, know that we can also be an outlet. We can be that break from reality for a lot of people. Yes. So should they be under this stress or feel like they're breaking because of work or tax or whatever, it's kind of nice to come back. And so, when John, you had talked to me about, hey, I love this idea of music, and I said I'm fascinated by that, because here it is, you could take pretty much one album and just
dissect
into it.
Yeah.
You may only have 10 songs on or 12 songs, but what is the meaning of each of those? How long, this is a question for both of you, how long does it take you in your expert, style of study to feel very confident I can talk exclusively about XYZ album or artist?
Well, I would say for me, because I've been blessed to have maybe a little bit more of an above average knowledge, I won't lie.
3 milliseconds. Let's face it.
Right now, I'm definitely choosing the albums that I'm coming in with an advantage of having an above average to high end knowledge of, so that I don't necessarily have to say, okay, am I going to have to fly by the seat of my pants? But thankfully, this man right here in the editing process, he makes me look so intelligent. Because if I suddenly do He can edit that right out and move right on to the next point, and he makes me look even more intelligent than I'm trying to make myself look. So there's benefits to that. But knowing that I have a love for the artist or the album, you come in it with an instant confidence. And you just kind of ride on that confidence. And then, of course, with all form of communication, it gets a little improvisational because it can segue into a thought that just suddenly pops into your brain out of that, that gigantic database in my brain. Will be like, oh, wait, there's this. Then I can expound on that. And that wasn't something I was thinking about even. It just happened.
Right.
And then I say it to John, then John has something that he piggybacks on, then it jumps back over to me. And it's just this great dialogue that doesn't even require much effort.
All right, so wait, hold on. So if it only takes you 3 seconds, I'm going to say you're the millisecond. So let me get my, there are attorneys involved. So yeah, 3.3 millisecond. Are you the 33-minute man then? Do you take more time to study it?
Yeah, 33 years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I do. My family and friends do say that I have a pretty good music knowledge, but it just I don't retain it as well as he does. I'm more of an in the moment person. I like to listen to the music and I enjoy it, and I remember lyrics and things like that, and I remember general things. I'm more of an average retainer of the information as opposed to him.
So he's the minute detail guy.
Yes.
The big, what do they say? The macro level guy, the large vision guy of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so hot seat time. What's your favorite album? And if you need your attorney, we'll call him over. I'm gonna keep making that stupid comment because I think it's great.
We'll wait.
Yeah. Mr. Douglas, no.
Oh my goodness!
Wow. I know. I'm asking you to pick your favorite kid, and it's hard. But
it is because I mean, there's great Beatle albums. There's great, albums.
You're just stalling. Everybody's got great albums.
Like,
those Stones have great perform. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but there's one. There's that guilty play. There's one that you always go back to. It's your chicken noodle soup on a rainy day. It's the one that's going to make you feel warm and fuzzy when you're driving up from Nashville. There's got to be an album out there.
I got a list.
Can
I cheat?
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, pull it up, John, because I'm sure some of mine are.
You keep thinking though.
Okay.
No, I remember something.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, let's see. I want to hear John.
Can I name a couple so I don't make any of them angry at me?
Sure.
I like. Let's see. The debut Boston album. We just did a Boston podcast.
That's absolutely.
Because that's front to back. You don't need to shut that one off.
No.
More recent one, not really. Stone Temple Pilots' Purple album. It's a great album.
Great poll.
And I'll stop there.
Well, the answer we're looking for was Hot August Nights by Neil Diamond for John, and he did not say it, so he does not win $100.
This is a Neil Diamond
guy. I love Neil Diamond for sure. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
That was another artist stuff.
Well, here, I'll stall for you, so you have one more minute. I got to tell my favorite Neil Diamond story. So my parents loved him, and he was like one of the first concerts, and I saw him all the way through the early 2000s before he retired. Anytime he came around today, you just got to see this guy. You just don't have a showman. And my favorite thing about him was any show I saw, when he would get to Sweet Caroline, he would, he played with the same drummer forever. And you can check me on this, but I think his drummer also maybe filled in with Bob Seger and a couple other guys over the years too. But they had this kinship, and he would get to the last verse and he would turn, and the drummer would know that he would just have to kind of hold the drum beat, and then Neil, which you weren't supposed to do unless you were from Vegas. You never turn your back to the audience, but he would start talking to the drummer like, I don't know, do you think they want me to sing this one more time? And there were ladies whose ages started with 6 and went much higher than that were probably trying to disrobe at this point in time, to throw whatever support system they might have had on their body towards him. And he would ask this question 3 times, and I was the only one in these crowds of 30,000 fans that's dying laughing because these people are losing their mind. As he's like, of course you're going to sing it one more time, but the fact that he's sitting there kind of wiggling his backside and talking to the judge, I don't know, Neil, I don't know, you think you want one more verse of Sweet Caroline? And then he would turn around and sing, and I just thought, I've yet to see, I mean, there's some modern day artists, but there's that showmanship that I think might be forever lost when he's gone. And a lot of the people, a lot of his contemporaries who've passed on, they used to have that. Just own the stage, own the fans, get that fervor up, that foam, if you will. And then I'm going to give you what you want as that big release. And he understood that emotional kind of, certainty. So he always inspired me. We've talked about how, look at now, I'm caught on camera. Normally I'm not supposed to touch this, but I just knocked your thing over. I'm guilty. I try to use those moments too when I'm on stage being a comedian. How do you hold? How do you get the people to kind of fall in? So big Neil Diamond fan. My first wife I had, her family was such Neil Diamond fanatics that her middle name was Desiree.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Well,
now that you're talking about live albums, when I was a child, I would always drag my cousins down into the basement, and I would emerge from the laundry room with my mom's racquetball racket and a hairbrush, and it would either be Elvis Presley Aloha from Hawaii, or Barry Manilow Live.
Okay.
I grew up loving both those artists, and as far as live performances go, I mean, Elvis was one of the best.
Sure.
Even in the latter years of his life where he had the decline, his health was faltering, he was still the kind of artist that so was committed to pouring out and giving his best to an audience. And when he did that Hawaii, concert, it just was fabulous. And of course, the previous year, there was a Madison Square Garden concert, which was sensational. But I mean, that certainly would rate as one of my favorite albums. And Barry Manilow, I mean, a lot of people were kind of like down on Barry, but I mean, you talk about a guy who just, like so many from Brooklyn, New York, just had his heart set on being a part of music, not realizing that while he was Bette Midler's arranger, that all of a sudden he meets Clive Davis. And like so many people meet Clive Davis, their lives are forever changed because Clive was like, this guy with the golden ear, like Don Kirshner and others. They just knew talent when they saw it. And Barry's like, wait, what? Me performing my voice? I'm from Brooklyn. I hate my voice, just like Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I hate my voice, but the great producers, they're the ones that see it and it comes out.
Sure.
And I mean, but in 78, Barry was at the peak of his stardom. And you can hear it in every one of those songs on that album. So
did he do the rendition of Copacabana that everybody loved? Was that
was right after the live album. Because that's when he did the Even Now album, and he was still riding that wave of success. But a guy who started out, music, he takes the Chopin prelude in C minor, a funeral dirge, and he incorporates that into the song "Could It Be Magic." I mean, what a genius.
Yeah.
He goes back and listens to, this thing as he's done eating dinner and with a glass of wine. Like, hey man, I just ripped off the prelude in C minor, but it wound up being rolled right into the song. And I mean, that's what great musicians do. And that's one of the reasons why I love music, because the musician's process fascinates me. Because I only took a piano elective in college, so I have about this much musical knowledge from a performance standpoint. But those who are out there, God, I have such admiration for them.
Wow.
And what they do to us in our hearts.
Yeah.
They appeal to that musical soul on the inside of us. And now for me and John to be able to talk about this every time we do a podcast, it's like the easiest job in the world.
So I have to jump in by saying that Wes did bet me $100 a piece. I got you wrong. He said how August 9th, and I said Piano Man for you. So now he's winning $200. So thank you for your answers. It's absolutely wonderful.
Oh my goodness!
It's time for cross-examination.
Yes. Are you ready, counsel?
Have you ever seen a grown man cry? You will on this episode. Into the Runout. The waiver promise. All right, what do you got for me?
Have you ever been to a Turkish prison?
No. I did have a bad dream about that one time that has to do with mushrooms and being in Oregon. Oh, sorry. We'll have to cut that later. But
So has anyone ever asked you questions on your podcast about yourself?
Not very
Not really.
often. I think we had one when we got to maybe our 25th episode. I had a faculty member and also comedian. He worked at Ivy Tech. I think he interviewed. Didn't we have Father Kurt, I think, come on and interview me? Or
I'm going to talk to somebody here, but we had that switch where your own professor
Oh, that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah. So we had Kurt Messick, but yeah, we had Robert Affey, who was my favorite media / telecom professor. And we did a segment where I got to interview him, but then he refused to leave without interviewing me. So that's how we did that as a special episode. So I guess the long answer is sort of
maybe.
Yes.
So can we ask you about your business? Like,
No,
what do you do?
absolutely not.
No? I know your listeners might know a little bit, but our listeners don't know.
Yeah, you get one question and a no. Yeah, so I own Lambert Consulting. I love to tell just a very brief story about like when they go, oh, how'd you get into owning your own small advertising firm? Does it come from like this background? Like my dad was in a baker, so it's not like it was handed down. I just realized in my 20s, I would love to be a community member and a leader, and I felt like a good instructor or teacher. I was a terrible employee. And I'll give you one example. I worked for a bank post 9/11 because my then dreams of advertising had kind of gone away. So everybody was shrinking down. And one day we were using this new fangled device, kind of an email. This is back in the day. It was kind of not internet, but kind of intranet and stuff. And so the bank president would write weekly kind of thoughts or new rules from the president. And at the time, you didn't have control of where your reply was. I just assumed since the email was coming from what looked like to be our manager or our branch's office, when you hit reply or reply all, it would just go to them, not to the whole field of the bank. And so I wrote back one day, this is Lambert's Friday's rules that you need to follow. For example, if you're a teller, you do not have to wear pants. You just can't stand up. Something like that. And I knew that I was awesome when I did that because I could hear the chimes of all the people around me as their inbox got hit and heard the managers yell, laugh, and then yell my name Lambert because we had two phone systems there. One was the 800 number, the local number you would call if you're trying to get a branch manager or teller. And then we had what was the internal phone or the bat phone. And that lit up pretty quick. And I didn't realize that was connected to the president's office who was calling. And because I had not actually denigrated that person, I did not say anything inappropriate. There was really no hard jokes. They were just embarrassed. And that was it. So basically, I went from being everybody's hero to kind of getting kicked in the butt by the management of my office or my branch, and then back to the hero because I thought, boy, if I got that many laughs the first time, I could do it. But that's when I also learned, for me, I will only really be able to work for somebody if they have a mutual respect. I'm not saying I don't, it's not like fight the power, fight the man, sort of thing. It was just, I worked for a lot of dumb people and I thought I could do better. That was my attitude. And the second part of this answer that's way too long, you have to cut most of it, is I was working for the Small Business Development Center, 2009. My company starts in 2010. So what happens during that 1 year that I'm retained there? Well, the state level person decides he doesn't get along with anybody in our office, even though he's never really come down and talked to us, and fires us through the local newspaper, which violates a whole bunch of stuff and cause issues that I think I can openly talk about at a different time. But I basically started Lambert Consulting out of just brimstone and hatred. And I was like, you're leaving so many good people in these 10 counties I represented as a small business advisor in the lurch because you two idiots, a guy, at the state level and one of the regional managers, like they couldn't get along. So what, the rest of us have to penalize? You're going to take all the tax dollars away. You're going to do and I had already proven my worth as like, I brought, John's in, he's got XYZ company. Let's talk about the business loans. Let's talk about the backing. Let's talk about the market. Like, let's get you going. So we had proven records. And I just thought, well, maybe I just do this on my own. Maybe that way I don't have to file a formal report every time I work with a client. I can just help them get to that next level. And so that's where my story kicks off. And like I said, I studied media and advertising in college, and I love that storytelling. It's very unique.
Now, your business is based here in Bloomington.
Correct.
But you have Chicago roots.
I do. So born and raised just outside of Chicago in a suburb called Arlington Heights. And we actually moved into the city. I was telling him off camera that my dad was in commercial real estate starting out downtown. My mom was a professional barber for a lot of the guys at CBS News, Walter Jacobs, we talked about,
Bill Curtis. And so those were her clients. And as my story goes, my sisters came along and ruined it. There was a cute photo of me at 2 years old with a thumb out, and we get a cab to stop. I don't know what happened now in my late 40s. I do that and they just drive by. So, but once sisters came along, we moved out to the suburbs. So yeah.
Cool. See any live music in Chicago while you were there?
Oh, I was very fortunate to get to see quite a few shows. Obviously my dad was a rock and roll guy, so we got to go see the Beach Boys when they were still together.
Nice.
We talked about Neil Diamond. My first concert that I have such a core memory of is I don't know if I could even drive, because remember my friend's mom drove like 6 of us to see the Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, cool.
When they were doing the you guys will probably remember the title. I just know it had like Tonight on it and stuff. It was their first box set. So went to an old arena. We thought we didn't have a lot of money, so we were up like on the second or third story watching them rock out. We thought it'd be a great idea to maybe start a mosh pit up there. And thank God security was bigger, stronger, and smarter than us, and kind of just grabbed us by our scruffs and said, "You guys can bounce back, left to right, but no forward, no one on the stairs." And as a kid, you're like, "Oh, that sucks. That's the man." And I was an adult. I'm like, "Oh, I would have been the dumbass that got knocked over." And so yeah, and then subsequent to that, I try to see live music when I can.
How about here in Bloomington?
I
being a college town.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be honest, the only good venue I think that still exists is Bluebird. I have another great college memory of a bar that was called Mars or Jake's or something. I don't know what it's now, but what's that?
It was both of them.
Oh,
Access.
And Access. So it had like 3 names in 4 years because of great ownership. But I remember they brought George Clinton and Funkadelics, and so I don't know.
Cool.
I don't know who owed George a favor or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why are you on this little crappy stage?" But I just remember I was not a user of any substance, but by the end I was like on cloud 18 because he came out, and all I remember was a 20-minute version of Atomic Dog being played there, and everybody being happier than pigs and poo that he just kept going with it.
Now, I don't know if you have any questions, but I have one more question related to the Bluebird. Actually, one of our listeners asks, do you and any of the other members of Queen have any future plans to play at the Bluebird here?
Oh, that's a great setup for that.
I think they're a little confused.
Yes. So now we're gonna get angry Andrew on camera. That's what they want here for clicks. You want clickbait? Here you go, folks. So here's the problem. I am Andrew Lambert. I do not sing, nor do you want me to sing, even in a karaoke status. I'm pretty sure I have violated multiple consumer rights and behavior actions against these artists by doing that. But I do love music. The problem is this little just talented bastard, Adam Lambert, who came off of just touring around the US. He was great with American Idols where he was discovered. I remember seeing him and go, "God, look at the pipes of this guy." And as his name grew, and of course, he was a huge fan of rock, and I give him a lot of credit for actually pulling the original members of Queen together years after Freddie had passed. He's credited with writing, with telling them, "I can do it." Those guys didn't believe that he could do it. And look, I mean, the tours that I've heard, people are like, you have to see him. You have to see him in concert. He sounds so much like Freddie. So the problem was Adam and Andrew sound so much alike. So I get a lot of, "Hey, you're Adam Lambert." And it's like, "No, you're insulting him. I'm Andrew, but thank you." And actually, because this has been going on for 10 plus years and I do some stand-up, one of the first jokes I ever wrote that I still stand by, which is I had to help my audience differentiate between me and Adam Lambert, right? So it goes like this. To tell us apart, one of us is a very talented singer, songwriter, I think Emmy Award winner now, who sings and tours with Queen, while the other one of us looks great in, gray shirts and assless caps. So you have to kind of figure out who is who, and it's a tricky one. But so yeah, well, thank you all 3 listeners that wrote that question. I appreciate that. So
now my question is, Andrew, when you were visiting John to set this evening up, John happened to be playing this album over his
the Blues Brothers system. Case of Blues, baby.
Tell me a little bit about your love for Jake and Elwood and the band. And because, it was an album that I finally purchased for myself in my 30s. But the movie itself, I was like 8 years old when it came out. And it's one of my all-time favorites. But yeah, tell me about this record and your love for music as well.
I was such a big fan because of the Blues Brothers. My dad would show me, some rerun clips from Saturday Night Live that predated me, and I saw the movie about the same time you did. In fact, I fell in love with those characters. That me and my best friend, I think this is in 5th or 6th grade, actually went as Jake and Elwood. Like, we got little suits, we wrote with markers on our hands and stuff like that, and then we're talking, as though we were the Blues Brothers. As hilarious as 2 10-year-olds could be, I guess. But I remember seeing that movie, and even as a kid, I just was mesmerized by the amount of cameos that was in it. I mean, we were talking right before we went live. It's like you'd have to recreate that movie in a way where today's performers would be like, again, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, some of the other bands that I'm forgetting, and I don't know if they would agree to do that, but the fact that you got all, Ray Charles and I almost said Queen Latifah. I was saying Queen Latifah needs to come into the new version.
Right. Oh, absolutely. She'd be perfect.
But, other people that were in it would, and even as a 10 or 12-year-old going, like, how do you get these great lines? And I think that's where not only did I really fall in with comedy and the absurdity that you can get away with if your character is not, the best or brightest necessarily, but still lovable, right?
Yes.
Like they're lovable morons is what they are. Like,
yes.
their intent is good. The way they go about it is disastrous for pretty much anybody who touches them in the movie, right? And that's what makes it so famous.
Yes.
And then it inspired me to start like going back and then listening to the songs of the artists that were actually in the movie, kind of discovering the great, I'm going to steal what you were saying before, jazz and R&B and even some classic rock and gospel, and, like, wow, these James Brown as a minister or preacher.
Yeah.
It took me years to figure out the irony and how funny that was given his actual behavior, maybe not biggest love for religion, and yet he's a guy of a famous black church in Chicago. And I think I answered your question. I think there's a response.
Absolutely.
There, so.
And interesting too, because the exterior of that church was actually not terribly far away from the part of Chicago that John grew up in, where we went to high school.
Yeah.
The interior was, of course, in the Universal Studios.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love the fact that the movie just paid such homage to every single type of Black American music.
And I think it's very underappreciated because Dan Aykroyd and Belushi were connoisseurs of music. They had already written, they had performed not just as Blues Brothers, but as other musicians or on sketches and stuff like that. And I think it's their love for that style of music. I mean, if you can show the back of it, I mean, they have a band. It's not just 2 comedians that are,
Steve Cropper and Donald Dunn, members of the Booker T and the MGs. They played with Otis Redding.
Yeah.
Paul Schaefer, of course, he was unable to appear in the movie because he had a contractual obligation, but he was the whiz on the keyboards.
Yes.
The horn section, Tom Malone, Lou Marini, Alan Rubin. You had Steve Jordan on the drums. You had Tom Scott on the other sax. These guys, Matt Guitar Murphy, these guys were accomplished musicians.
Yes.
And when they were able to put this band together and to create this just homage to the blues and do it with such proficiency, such professionalism, such respect for the craft. And John Belushi, for all of his, manic ways, he was a respectable singer. Yes. He could really interpret those songs with great just authenticity.
Yeah.
And it's, one of those great tragedies because, I think there was so much more music left in John and many more albums that could have explored more and more of that genre. But, I think about, John Lee Hooker. He's down there on Maxwell Street, a part of Chicago now that's been bulldozed over for the University of Illinois, Chicago. But there's John Lee Hooker singing Boom, Boom, Boom while they're driving down Maxwell Street in the area of Maxwell Street that they call Jewtown.
Yeah.
Where you would go down and go to the vendors and buy things. And,
So here's a question I have for you guys, and I've always wondered this, and I don't know if you have the answer, but maybe do a special episode on it. But I'm trying to look at the lineage. I've always thought that the band members that you just listed, all these famous guys, fell in love with Belushi after he did his on-air impression of Joe Walsh. You remember that when they were singing and he would do the deeper voice? I hope I'm saying the right guy. I
think so because Joe Walsh appeared in the movie.
Yes, right. So, and I don't know if you remember, but there's a famous like late 70s or early 80s, like when they called him up on stage to do his thing, and Belushi walks out and mimics him side by side, which is a great watch. A lot of people don't realize that. I don't if you can find it, we can even.
I think that might even maybe been Joe Cocker. Maybe.
Cocker,
yeah.
Sorry, not Joe Walsh, Joe Cocker.
But Joe Walsh was appropriate though because he did
Right.
play the role of a prisoner.
Correct.
At the end of the movie when they're back in Joliet singing Jailhouse Rock.
That's right.
But you're right. Yeah, it was Joe Cocker.
So it was Cochran, but I always wanted to know because I just from the little bit of the history rabbit hole I've gone down to, this is my opinion. I could be totally wrong. I mean, obviously those guys were big names, so they probably already were in. But to watch Belushi's performance and then see the Blues Brothers come out shortly after that, it's hard for me not to think, okay, these guys, were professional musicians. Is this guy who's manic? I love that word. And will he embarrass us? Or is he going to take us to the next level? And you didn't make fun of Cochran back in the day. That was not an acceptable thing.
Well,
and the fact that he could go out and sound like him, dress like him,
did it in front of him.
It did it in front of him, which you didn't do, I guess. I mean, I don't know as much about Cochran as other guys, but I mean, from what I've read, it's like you didn't tick him off. He had a temper. He was very serious about the music. And here's Belushi, in a way, kind of knocking him off his pedestal a little bit, and he appreciates that.
Yeah.
So, is there a connection, in your opinion, that then here's the blues band that we put together?
I think so. I think they came in with some respectability.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Dan Aykroyd was at least able to sell the idea to the guys. I mean, when he had Cropper and Dunn come to the studio, they came kind of wondering, but when they sat down and heard Dan explain it, they're like, hey, we can do this. But a little side story, which I told you off camera, is they walk into the studio to meet Dan Aykroyd, and what's playing over the sound system, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding.
Yep.
And they both break down because they're like, man, we haven't listened to this song since Otis died.
Yeah.
I mean, because they played. I mean, that's Cropper and Dunn sounded their best for Otis. And but these were serious musicians. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you put them on that stage and Jake and Elwood, they may be John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, but on that stage, they were Jake and Elwood. And they had it all.
They always had the suitcase. They always had a actor or a friend that was the police officer that would unhook the tickets. You just didn't know what was inside. They rarely showed you what was inside of it. But, Elwood always had to have his briefcase attached to his hand.
And the genius, too, which is something if I ever get the chance to talk to Dan Aykroyd, I would love to ask him, or Steve Cropper, the intro to the actual concert, which is I Can't Turn You Loose.
Yeah.
It starts out I Can't Turn You Loose, but then there's a little segue in there where where Elwood is talking about what's going on, and it's this organ thing. Well, that was actually Time Is Tight by Booker T and the MGs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you got Otis Redding, Booker T and the MGs finishing up with Otis Redding. But because Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper played on both tracks, they were able to merge those two together and make it sound like one song.
It's amazing.
And of course, that thing was playing when they destroyed the mall, which was only about 10 minutes away from where I grew up.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm 8 years old watching these guys demolish a mall in the Blues Mobile.
Okay, hold on, because you guys are pop culture. Who has the famous, he's a director, who has the famous cameo when he holds up and says, do you have this in a Miss Piggy? As a famous director.
Really?
Yeah.
Who is it?
It's John Landis.
It is John Landis. And also, I'm pretty sure you can check me on this, but I thought, isn't he the guy that stamps it?
Yeah, they got him at the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, because at the time, Landis and Spielberg were friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, of course, that friendship ended the following year because of the whole Twilight Zone disaster.
Yes.
Landis had the kids working off contract at night. The unfortunate accident with Vic Morrow on the airplane, and then that was when Spielberg's like, went out, which is sad for Landis, but they were friends at the time, and so it's like here's Steven Spielberg, at the Cook County Assessor's office. Can I help you guys?
Like you said, so many Easter eggs in that movie. It's insane.
And
John Candy.
I was going to mention before we move on. I have to, I just watched the beautiful, beautiful documentary of John Candy. Can't speak more highly of it if you liked him. And although they didn't touch a whole lot in the Blues Brothers, because even though he was Canadian, he had fallen in love with Chicago. So that's why so many of his characters were tied to Chicago or to the greater Midwest area, because he felt like he could relate to those people better, right? And so him being one of the police chiefs just made every Chicago guy so, happy, because he could be arrogant, but they're flipped upside down. He's like, "Can you hand me the walkie?" And it's like, what car are we in? And that's
5-5.
Yeah.
But I have to ask the question: the orange whip.
Oh,
3 orange whips.
3 orange whips. You got that, Wes? So
this gentleman is a humble abode of one elbowed blues. Yeah, thanks for your help, Mr. Mercer. I kind of like the Wrigley Field bit. Yeah, real cute.
Yes,
it was perfect.
Yeah, because you had to have the guy who was smarter than the police officers and who were smarter than a criminal, but was so disenchanted and borderline insulted that he was working with these people, that every one of his looks at the camera was just this very cute, just like, does anybody on here have a brain? Why am I showing up and we're not here?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one other question too, if you don't mind me saying,
please.
Which is, what's your take on Aerosmith? That's actually one of my favorite bands, and I was hoping we could talk about them just for
I was going to ask what your favorite album was, what your favorite band was, so let's go there.
Aerosmith. Aerosmith is probably up there. Metallica is definitely a close second. I think by the time I got to high school, I just fell in love with heavier rock. One of my closest friends was an Aerosmith fanatic, and so he kind of introduced me to it. And you're asking me, which album? I just remember him back in the day. We had this thing called CDs, and he bought me like 3 of their CDs, and I had it memorized. And I'm just like, got my oversized 1999 headset that was the size of a small Cadillac, and I'm just blasting my ears out listening to these Dream On, this guy who's hitting high notes that I didn't think a guy could hit, and then start looking at their stuff. One of my more memorable ones isn't the big ones I like, because that was really that. If you haven't listened to Aerosmith, Big Ones is like kind of their greatest hits, but that was a good sampler. But I think the more mature album that I always love, and I still listen to it, was 9 Lives. I just thought that was so interesting, because they had come out of the 80s. This was more of a 90s, early 2000s album, and they had done a lot of traveling. And I find if you just listen to the instruments in the back, like Taste of India is one of their opening songs on that, and he actually got Indian musicians to perform. So you're hearing chimes and Indian drums and stuff that you would not normally associate with hard rock. And then they kept it in, and they kept up as that crescendo drew up, right? They could play just as loud. And then the next thing they have another song called Fly Away From Here, which is one of my favorite ballads by them. And they use more synth piano than they normally would, and just kind of how that guides you through it. So I would say, that's probably, I don't know if that's my most, I'll put myself, I think up there. That's one of my favorites.
I got a couple of favorites. Yep. I absolutely love Toys in the Attic.
Oh, that's a great one.
So as far as like landmark albums for Aerosmith, and I mean, you think about the songs on there. I mean, sure, Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion.
Right.
But then when you go deeper into the album, No More, Round and Round, Adam's Apple, You See Me Crying. Yes. And then, of course, probably the naughtiest song on the album, Big 10 Inch.
Yeah.
Which tells this funny story about the band that plays the blues, but what Big 10 Inch is talking about were kind of leaves open for discussion.
So not balloon animals. I mistook. Gosh, you guys are really having me go through a paradigm shift today. I really thought the whole time he was just talking about a balloon sword, but damn it, man.
And then I love too, because after Steven Tyler bottoms out and he breaks with Joe Perry, and then Joe Perry goes off and does his thing, then they reunite.
Yeah.
They commit themselves to sobriety. They do a good album, Permanent Vacation, but then they do Pump.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy smokes, they're right back in that form again. I mean, Love an Elevator, The Other Side, JD's Got a Gun, What It Takes. I mean, just a band that, in the liner notes, they talked about, the program, recovery. They're acknowledging, okay, we've committed ourselves to this, and now here we are. We're the band that everybody knew we could be and what we are. And then they rode that momentum into the 90s with Crying and Don't Want to Miss a Thing and Pink and just all the other songs that they did. They just rolled that wave, and amazing.
So my kind of follow up to that too was when I turned 40, that was the last time the band members, they were doing a residency in Vegas. And I was so excited to see them because I was like, in my gut, I was like, I think this is the last time the original five, before they were having problems, wanting to kick out the drummer and everything else. But I still have such a good memory of that because, I mean, I got to see Steven in what they call his second height, which was late 90s, early 2000s, where he was still kind of coked up and flying around the audience and doing backflips and stuff. And he was probably 40s, 50s. So I got to see the older Steven, and I just realized that it made me so happy because I think he really enjoys the showmanship of it. And the story I tell people is, even though we're in the second balcony kind of looking down, they're playing Living on the Edge, which we forgot to touch on.
Oh, yeah, that too.
And, Joe Perry, he's singing, and it gets that famous three bass drum, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
The problem is they had, well, not a problem for him, but the problem for people who wanted to hear the rest of the songs, they had fans standing on the wings that was VVIPP bars, like, so they could actually be on the stage. This was in the Dolby Theater at Park MGM out there, and Steven happened to maybe see a beautiful younger lady than him standing there sipping on a drink, and so he went over, and they had like a little bit of a bar, and he's kind of bent over backwards and clearly not quite listening to his monitors. He's infatuated with whoever this lady is, misses the three famous beats. And I watched Joe Perry go over and kind of like kick him in the shin. And he's like, living on the edge, and kind of snapped him out of it. And then shortly after that, there was health issues and they haven't really regrouped. And I thought, boy, that was a lucky thing for me. And before you ask, John, I know you're going to come to this. I am not a fan of I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. That was terrible. I use that as a recurring joke with my friends. I'm like, I can't believe Aerosmith wrote that song. And I mean, I don't mind a good love ballad, but I mean, come on. The music video should make you nauseous because it's him kind of making kissy faces at his real life daughter who's making kissy faces back and saying, I don't want to miss a thing. And
it was a little creepy.
But just so for me. So now, like, when it comes on, it's immediately just I'm going to change because I know that my favorite band, didn't put that out.
Were you a fan of the movie Pearl Harbor then? Because I think that was part of the soundtrack.
It was, and what's that?
Armageddon.
Armageddon. I was going to make well, no. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, we're talking about Armageddon. I did like Pearl Harbor to a point. I'm
taking Affleck, so
I guess because we're talking about music, I will go way into the weeds here and by say I don't know if I appreciated all the soundtrack of Pearl Harbor, but I appreciated the soundtrack of Team America that addressed how bad Pearl Harbor was as a movie.
Okay.
And so I would say I lean towards that version of any of the songs, Pearl Harbor. Like. I don't know if you remember. It's R-rated, so I don't know if we can sing it, but
I'm sensing the way you're answering these questions and going on that you may have been in a band at one time.
Oh, I play dress up once in a while. I was never in a traditional rock band, but for the last decade, I'm in a rock synth band called The Way Far Out, and we dress up as aliens and we do play with synthesizers. I do play the drums. We have a whole backstory because a guy who, I'm just going to give him a shout out, Bob Woolman. Probably one of the most creative guys I've ever met, one of the most passionate guys. He is actually credited back in the 70s and 80s as a solo performer who brought over, I don't know how much you know about synth rock in Germany in the 70s, 80s, but there was Tangerine Orange, there were several other bands, and he just thought, this is super cool. Like, I could really maybe duplicate. And so he did this tour for a while, and then he got out of it. I mean, he still made a little money when SoundCloud and some of these came around, but we happened to be serving on a board together and talking about stuff like this, love of music. And he says, I would love to perform again. I want to get writing again. He goes, I have this kind of onstage persona that people want, but I don't want that. I want to do something a little bit different. And he also is known as being a very talented puppeteer. And he actually, and I should have brought him. I didn't bring him, but we've had Puppet Andrew. I have a little version of me that comes on and does,
We'll have to meet him next time.
Yeah, we'll bring him in. And he says, let's make characters. And so he never shows his face. He has a big, beautiful brain with a big eye that lights up. And
wow.
He ran all kinds of equipment. So like it actually, when we're making noises, different things light up on his brain, and his son, who's very musically talented, great guitarist. He is the love child of an alien and Willie Nelson, so he's got long dreads and a hippie look. And then I play the character of Scale Caesar. One, it was an homage to my comedy hero Mel Brooks and Hail Caesar, so it's Scale Caesar, and I'm a literal lounge lizard. So I wear a nice suit, but I have a foam tail, and I have scales that light up and glasses that light up. And my backstory is they found me at one of the kind of dive bars in a different universe where they used to have lounges, and I was the lounge lizard. And I would play drums for people, and so I would say that I use technology. You give me sheet music, for drums I can follow it okay. You start showing me stuff with guitars and stuff, it loses me. So I think I like the synth music because it allowed that freedom to say, hey, what was that a happy mistake, or do we cut that?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now, to piggyback on your Mel Brooks reference,
Yes.
Is it Blazing Saddles? Is it Spaceballs? Is it The Producers? What would you say is the quintessential Mel Brooks movie that's your, guilty pleasure that you go back to more than that?
So you're putting me on the hot seat and asking me to pick my favorite child too, which is very unprofessional for podcast people to do that. I would never do that in a million years. No, that's an easy one. I mean, honestly, when I say I love all this stuff, I do, but I think Spaceballs is just my go-to jam. When we were dealing with COVID and had to wear masks, I purposely bought one from an artist that said Spaceballs the mask, and that's what I walked around in. And I'm over the moon happy that they're making a sequel. I'm happy that they're able to get, the actors, many of them, to come back.
Yeah,
Rick Moranis out of retirement. Yeah. And I think because when that movie came out, nobody had really done parodies that well, and there was Spinal Tap and a couple others. But I think he said, what genre we haven't gone after is sci-fi.
Yeah.
They take themselves super seriously. It was always about how dramatic the movie or franchise Aliens was, or Predator. Well, what if we take that and just, tune it? And the fact that he became friends with George Lucas and got the trust of these other directors and writers who say, I think, I don't know if you ever heard it, his pitch was less about, yes, we're mocking you, but we're going to do it so well that you'll actually see an increase in interest in your products because people want to go back. And that's exactly what happened to Star Wars, Star Trek, the Alien franchise, Predator. I mean, he has all these great Easter eggs throughout that movie. And it's like, I can still watch it now as an adult, that came out in late 80s or something. Oh, yeah. Sorry about you're right. 1987. I mean, so you're going on almost 40 years. And I would put that movie up and say, even those references were late 80s, early 90s, they still work. You could probably make that movie shot for shot and people would still find the humor in it.
Oh, absolutely. And I love when he met George Lucas because he secured his Industrial Light and Magic to help with effects. But George said the only thing is you cannot do any action figures or anything. So what does Mel do? Yeah. He builds in the merchandising in the movie. Merchandising.
Okay, hold on. Because I still teach, marketing to students. And so I pull up the clip because people forget how good he was about marketing.
Yeah.
So even before you get to the merchandising scene, they're crashed. They're found, the four of them are found by, the little alien creatures. And of course, in Star Wars, they're making noises as they walk, the four of them. Do you know what they're actually saying in that scene? They're singing a song, Dink, 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 which is
Bridge Over the River Kwai.
Yes, but they rewrote that because Dink in marketing is double income, no kids. And those are the people that are most likely to spend money on frivolous things.
Wow.
And those were technically two couples. It was Barf and Dottie, and then I'm forgetting the princess and I forget what's his name. But the creatures didn't know if they were married. They just assumed I had two adult couples that had no kids. So the Dink Dink leads up to the joke of, okay, here's a great yogurt and then the merchandising thing.
Oh my goodness.
And people miss that all the time. And I go, that is, to me, as somebody who works in that field, that was like, I remember seeing that even as a kid going, what are they saying? What does that mean? What does that mean?
I had no idea.
D-I-N-K. Double income, no kids. That leads to a merchandising thing. So there you go. And guys, this has been just awesome. Thanks for letting me ramble about stuff today.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. But now I want to give my listeners a sample. Like, what is your show like? What would you do? Can you give us a couple minutes of that?
You want to go?
Absolutely. I mean, when we step in, we have a little small talk, and then we just kind of dive into the topic. So far, we've kind of varied. We've like our first week was just to introduce us to the podcast world. And then we went with the Beatles, and then we jumped into a couple of, I think we did like a couple of smaller segments one week. Mm-hmm. Then we jumped in and we did Billy Joel, and we've done Queen. We've covered the Rumors album by Fleetwood Mac. We've done Kansas's Point of No Return. Mm-hmm. We've done
Bob Seger.
Yeah. We've done Queen. We did Rumors by Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, so we'll talk artists, albums, and everywhere in between. Just kind of have fun with it.
Yeah, and and that's just, we pretty much start right at the beginning. So if if it's an artist, I'll introduce the artist, where they're from, their background as best as possible with my knowledge or John's knowledge, and we just segue in and we just try to follow a timeline of their career. Just having done Bob Seger, we got the chance to tell the public, hey, Bob was doing rock and roll from the time he was like 16. And through various variations, he finally put together the Silver Bullet Band that started that upward trend for him, where Live Bullet became the great live album, segued into all of his subsequent albums that turned him into a rock and roll legend. But we also talked about that he also was friends with Glenn Frey. They were both from Detroit. He, sang Ramblin' Gamblin' Man in the background on Bob's album, played guitar on that song. So we have an absolute ball. And if it's an album, we try to lay the groundwork of what preceded. Like when we did Point of No Return, we first talked a little bit about Leftoverture, the album that was before. When we did Rumors, we talked about Fleetwood Mac's Self-Titled, when Lindsay and Stevie Nicks joined the band. And we try to lay some groundwork and then talk about, okay, how did this now morph into this monster album? And
I'd like to add, too, we do get a lot of questions about the title of the podcast, too.
Yeah.
Into the Runout. What's the Runout?
What is
Do you know what a runout is? Can you guess?
I would imagine, isn't the area of the record that kind of sounds like you're scratching after you're done with one side?
Yeah, it's when the music's done, and then you get to the label, that blank part in between. So when the music fades,
the discussion begins.
That's our motto. So
yeah,
we can talk about what you just heard.
That's amazing.
And I gotta say, because I've been thinking about this all week, what I would say, John is such a friend now for almost 40 years. I mean, he was the best man at my wedding. And we've shared life, and we're thoroughly enjoying this. And he would be the first to tell you that, okay, yeah, Tony's the show. Let me tell you a little something about my friend here. When I pitched the idea, he was out of the stall with the idea. He came up with the title. He does all the editing. He does all the social networking. He uploads all the content. He does the segments, top tracks of the week with all the new music. He does all the research for this week in music history. And 39 years, this man has never said a crossword to me, at one. And I don't think he's probably said too many crosswords to any person. We've never had a fight. And I'll say this, the only fight we'll probably ever have in our life is if this podcast ever becomes profitable, if he wants to share the earnings down the line 50-50, I'm going to say no. You do at least 65% of the work. I will fight you on principle. He is the pistons and the high mileage synthetic oil that makes this machine run. I get the honor to take the key, put it in, turn it on, and ride this baby every week.
Well, wait, we got a surprise for you. John, go ahead. You said you wanted to lay into him. Let's do it live here. We're ready for the
first of all. I got a whole list.
Yeah,
where do I start?
He has a pad of paper here, folks. This is good out of hand.
I'm just happy to be your Abbott to your Costello. Or Costello to your Abbott.
Yeah.
However you want to put it.
All right. So not to sound like an old bitter man here, but what's going on with music? When I guess I'm at that age, you get into your 40s or 50s and everything's crap, right? And we were talking momentarily off during the break about, like, you talk to people and you could kind of tell where that love for music ends. It might have been the 90s. It could be a life change. Maybe you became a parent, but do you think that's true? Is what comes or what is being produced now junk, or is it just we look at it from a different lens?
I think it's a different lens for me, and John has helped me broaden my lens again and see that there is good music out there. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that because I'm definitely an old folk. I'm an old school, sentimental, sappy to a fault. And
so what year, you had mentioned earlier, when do you think your kind of love for found music full-time paused for you?
Right about as we got into the 90s. And it wasn't because I hated grunge. It wasn't because I hated, necessarily everything that was being, done at the time. But it seemed like as we crossed over from 89 to 90, a lot of things shifted. They shifted musically, and it just seemed like there was genres that were kind of pioneering, which were good for the industry. But for my musical ears, it gave me the opportunity to say, okay, I'm just going to stay here for a while. And if things maybe get a little bit better, maybe I'll jump ahead.
Sure.
And they never did for me.
So what I'm hearing him say, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, is he just doesn't want to go chasing waterfalls. Is that a fair statement? Is that where his... Or maybe
he's sticking to the lakes and the rivers.
That's fine. Well, that was not, I mean, you can cut this if you're not, but the other joke that came on my brain too was, or was he just mad when P. Diddy paid too much money, possibly too much baby oil to sing a song for Godzilla and basically ruining a Led Zeppelin song? You know what I'm talking
well,
about?
that could be, even though I will say he did great respect for Biggie Smalls.
Sure.
With every breath you take.
Yes,
that was done with great love and affection.
So you were paying attention a little bit.
I had some respect for that.
Yes. But not the guy. I will always harp on the Godzilla because I was dumb enough to buy the CD. I remember that. I was like, why did I pay my $20 on this? Because I realized I could get so much comedy out of it. Like, it was great that he had the full orchestra. I'm glad that I think he was covering. Wasn't it Kashmir?
Kashmir, by Zeppelin.
He was covering. I've never heard anybody sing it the way he did in terms where he keeps just yelling, turn it up. And I'm like, you're going to blow the tuba guy's lungs out. Stop turning it up. We don't need that. And then I realized, he had too much oil. Okay. Russ is telling me I can't make that joke. All right. What about you? What's your take on?
Well, you can find good new music.
Yeah.
It's there. Nowadays you just have to look for it harder.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have radio back in the day, and they would tell us, this is what you're going to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you liked it, you'd go buy the record and listen to everything else. Nowadays, and again, we have gray hair too, so this is our perspective. But to me, being the old man River telling you my side of the story is that I think TikTok's kind of directing the way of music nowadays. And if it's not trending and not getting played on radio for the younger audience, you're going to have to go out on your own and find it. You're going to have to stream it. You're going to have to go to YouTube, Spotify, whatever the case may be, live music. Just pay more attention. But there's a lot of good music out there and live music too.
I think a great example of that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Carole King has had a resurgence lately because of TikTok. There was one of her songs from the 50s or 60s that like the kids now used as backup song, and it's just, who would have thought, right? 60 years later. And
but appropriate though for Carole King, because she was a part of that amazing generation of Jewish kids that came from Brooklyn that made their way across the Brooklyn Bridge, went to Atlantic Records, to the different record companies, and they were writing songs for African-American singers.
Yep.
And it's so apropos now that her music is being discovered by yet another young generation. She was a part of that movement that really brought that young generation the kind of songs. I mean, from The Locomotion to Will You Love Me Tomorrow. I mean, it gave the Shirelles just, a kind of exposure that was amazing. And again, this group of gals that were just friends, and they became an overnight sensation because of a wonderful song written by a couple of Jewish kids in Brooklyn, New York. Which, of course, Neil Diamond, your favorite, Brooklyn, New York, Barry Manilow, Brooklyn, New York. Just on and on. But there's a great documentary that I remember watching that I still have on cassette that I love on the A&E network. It was called The Teens Who Stole Pop Music. And it was all of those guys that were in Brooklyn, including one that gets recognition here on the Briefcase of Blues albums, Doc Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
Who him and Mort Schumann, they wrote songs, that were in that era as well. Lieber and Stoller, they did Jailhouse Rock for Elvis. Now, they weren't from Brooklyn, but they were a couple of Jewish kids.
Yep.
And they wrote for black artists because they felt they were black. So amazing stuff.
So I love that. That's a whole different podcast, but I love the dynamics of what you see news about, does the Jewish community and the Black community behind closed doors, maybe on the surface it helps draw money up and we got this conflict. But to your point, I've seen this crossover not only in music and movies, but in sports and just other stand-up comedy and stuff like that, that there's actually a lot more support. But they realized at the time they had to be the front for this particular song but the airplay reached more than just, say, the Jewish community.
It crossed over. Like when they're doing the cha-cha-cha back in the 60s, you had white, you had African-American, you had Hispanic, you had all these different ethnicities on the dance floor. Correct. When Berry Gordy was trying to develop Motown music, he wanted to develop a type of sound that would permeate and go beyond the race label and go into the market. And he pulled it off. Yeah. He took a group of jazz and blues musicians, some good songwriters, some aspiring singers. He built a music empire that transcended race. And it revolutionized the music industry forever. And those pioneers are the ones that we look to now and say, my God, thank God what they did for us. The music fan, and that we now, in this simple, modest, humble little podcast, we can tell the world our knowledge. We don't claim to have all the knowledge, but we want to tell them the knowledge that we have so that we can at least give them the information. And if they're motivated, they can go and find that music for themselves. And hey, if they're even inclined, go ahead and do a podcast on what you know. Because it's a whole thing of spreading this knowledge of this great music medium to the world.
Do you both feel that podcasts is the newest form of storytelling? I mean, we didn't really get a chance to touch on it, but I've always seen music as a way to maybe speak to a moment in history. And if it's a good enough story, I mean, really music, comedy, all of it, it's really about, do you have a good story or a good message? Mm-hmm. And can you write something around it that's memorable? Do you think that's what podcasts are becoming now? In a way where you're historians in a way of saying, hey, this happened in the 70s or 80s, but
I definitely think so. And I think our podcast would be considered maybe an introduction to a good story. And we're the introduction to that book that the artist or the musician would supply to you. Yeah. So you just listen to us, we'll tune you into it, and then you go out on your own and listen to the actual music and the album.
Yeah. And if you want to take our knowledge and then cross-reference it, go ahead to your local library and do all the research. I mean, when we did projects and things for high school and college, we had to go to the library. We had to do the Dewey Decimal System. We had to cross-reference. We had to dig up the periodicals. That stuff is still there in one form, but I mean, we get to give them what we know. And then if they want to go and research it further, either at your local record store or the library,
whatever happened to Mr. Dewey? Okay, that's another conversation. I heard he's not doing so well. But what I'm hearing you guys say is maybe the next generation of listeners, they don't have to go they don't really have to go to the library. They can go online. I mean, that's kind of the cool thing about the internet.
Tip of their fingers.
YouTube or different social media and say, I want to learn more about
Or, if you don't mind a little plug.
No, please.
They can go to our Spotify, because I list all of our top tracks of the week that we talk about in a weekly segment to kind of give people a little head start or a little push towards new music. So,
yeah. And I think podcasts in general have become just a revolutionary thing in this era. I mean, so many people are sourcing it out for all kinds of different, things beyond music. And I think people are just wanting the story. They're wanting it shared in such a way where they don't feel talked down to. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the best podcasters out there are passionate about what they're talking about, and they're giving you the information. And then it's like, okay, you go and figure it out and make sure that what I'm saying is right. And if we get feedback, like we did one time from a listener that said we were regurgitating a little too much of the Billy Joel documentary, I'm like, all right, thanks. We'll take that as food for thought and try not to regurgitate, or just stick within the boundaries of what we know. And that's fine. I'm good with that.
All right. So speaking of boundaries, I'm going to ask another tough love question. So who's your go-to newly discovered artist, a modern artist, somebody today that, maybe 20 years ago, that's not my thing, but now you're into them?
Well,
you got anybody?
Well, I had a writer, an Uber rider in Nashville, a couple that had seen this band from Wales called Cardinal Black at the Basement East. It's the second time they came through Nashville. They're a band about 4 or 5 years old. They've done an album. They're about ready to release another one. I went to YouTube, pulled up a track and listened to it. And it was like, whoa, hello. My musical soul was loving the groove, loving the soul in the guy's voice. the tightness of the band. So yeah, that's definitely a band that I want to immerse myself a lot more in, because that's where I want to go with new music. It's got to reach here.
I have 3 artists that I'm currently very interested in. I have a guy called Matt Jaffe. He's a young guy, and I don't know his actual age, but if you look at him online, he looks like he's 16 years old. But he just got married a couple of weeks ago.
So 17.
So 17. But he sounds a lot like a young David Bowie. He was actually discovered by a member of the Talking Heads. And I've talked to him a little bit online, and he seems like a nice guy, good music. And then there's another guy called Jesse Wells, and I don't want to characterize him as a protest musician, but I would put him in the likes of like a Bob Dylan.
Nice.
Really great music, and he's very viral on Instagram, so you can find him on there. And then my favorite is a guy called I'm not going to mess it up either. It's Kaidi Akanibi.
Wow.
And he's a multi-instrumental, produces all his stuff, and he's writing 7 albums in this year alone. He gave himself a self-challenge. And he's kind of like he doesn't sound like Prince, but it's that type of talent, I guess. He can play pretty much every instrument, and he's really known for his saxophone playing, I think. So, and he just played with Coldplay, went on tour with him. And all these guys have very few followers, so if you can go and follow them, listen to them, I think you'll enjoy them.
I think that's awesome. And my favorite thing here is, like, as you guys are talking about this, I'm like, oh, we could do a whole episode about Coldplay and making out at their how does music? Yeah, right. No, you guys are supposed to talk, and our producer is supposed to move the camera off of you because you're not supposed to be together.
And I love all of the photographs that they did AI together.
Yes,
like, one of the sad stories of Chicago music was the dissolving of Tommy Shaw and Dennis DeYoung of the band Styx. Well, somebody put the 2 of them together. Dennis is here, Tommy's behind him. He got a big grin on his face, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
When that happened, I saw that so many times, and I'm sure everybody else did on Facebook and whatever. I put a warning out to my friends. I said, if you post one of these, I'm going to snooze you for 30 days. I'm tired of seeing these. It got overwhelming.
Well, I will share, I think, a great closing story that just happened to me now that we brought Styx up. And I think people who've listened to me, I'm saying this with a lot of love, and it's a little bit of a dark humor, but it's a very Lambert kind of Northwest Indiana moment that would make sense. So a few weeks ago, a cousin that was slightly older than me had a sudden passing, and the cousin said, hey, can you come up, for her funeral? And I said, sure. So we go up, and we're at the funeral home, and the director, a very nice lady, I think way too old to be messing with technology, says, hey, I want to put the program guides, and I know there's a couple of songs and stuff you'd want. So of course they had, Amazing Grace and a religious song called 10,000 Steps. So she knew those. And then my 2 other cousins are my age said, hey, we sang Come Sail Away forever after she had lost a son years ago when he was very little. And that was her song that got her through, was Come Sail Away. And the lady was like, okay, so you want a song called Styx? And they're like, no, the band is Styx. It's called Come Sail Away. So what ended up in the program guide was Come Sail With Me. So I've never heard this song before, but we're going to play it. And I guess they were just pulling music off of whatever internet subscription they had. And this is a great pop culture. This is where the funeral went from sad to actually funny for our family. So the family said, hey, when you play the song, assuming they were going to play the record version, which was only 3 minutes and 20 seconds long or something like that, we'd like the ushers to come up and everybody can walk by and say their final goodbyes and all that. Well, none of that happened. Not only did the song come on, but she had picked the album version, which is 6 minutes and 45 seconds, because every player of Styx got to have a solo during it. So those were cut immensely for radio play, because they weren't going to give them 6 minutes unless it was a late night show. And of course, anybody who saw Styx in their prime, they also did a 22-minute version of the same song, because it was their closer, which I assume by then everybody was stoned or high in some way and just started playing music to their content.
And they forgot they were playing.
And then finally, like, somebody like Wes was like, guys, it's 25. Like, I need to go eat. Can we wrap this up? So imagine this, the Lambert guys, and this is why I can do this visual, that we have two kind of moods at those things. If you're kind of sad, you don't want to see people crying, you kind of do this. If you're trying not to laugh, instinctively we do this. So most of my cousins who I can see behind are listening to the song and everybody's getting sentimental because she loved it so much. Then it dawned on me at the 3-minute mark when we started breaking out the solos, oh no, not only are the ushers not coming to get us, but they're playing the almost 7-minute version here. And so every one of the people that were related directly to me went immediately to the temples because they're like, please don't laugh, please don't laugh. But by the time the third synthesizer got his, 30 seconds of playtime, I'm like dying in the back of the room. I'm like, this is amazing. This is exactly. So I think she was there that day and she always loved awkwardness. I was like, there was not a better way because they were kind of upset. I said, guys, Wendy would have loved every moment of this. This is so ridiculous. This is such a Lambert, like you thought you had it planned, didn't come anywhere near. So I have this other now somewhat happy memory as we said goodbye to somebody I've known for a long time of like, you're sailing away to a great drum solo that went too long. So
Wow.
How about that, right? So
yeah.
I use it as a happy close because it's like even in the darkest of times, music and Into the Runout can bring those moments back where, you know what, maybe not everything is bad, not everything is sad. And that song, you're always going to have that moment. So anytime I hear that now, I'm immediately going to think, wow, she's standing there in whatever form, probably laughing her butt off, going, you guys have to sit through this, and you picked the wrong song. So did you have fun? Did you enjoy this?
Yeah.
I know we went long. I appreciate you guys. I want to talk to you for another
2 hours.
3 hours if possible. I know you got to get back to Nashville. Where can they find you guys? Can you give a quick plug online?
Go ahead, John.
We're everywhere.
You're the man.
So our main page is on YouTube. That's where you can watch us on video, and then audio versions are on Spotify and all the podcast sites, Audible, Apple Pods, all that good stuff. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, so they can contact you through there. Sometimes people want to give out names, numbers, addresses, emails, but it sounds like they find you on social
We're keeping
media.
it simple right now.
Yeah.
Find us on social media. You can comment on all our videos and hit us up if you got any comments or suggestions, anything like that.
And I'll just piggyback, shameless plug, since you made the funeral reference. My dear father, Anthony Joseph Nasella Jr., passed away back in 2016, but I chose American Trilogy.
Oh.
So every time that was his song,
Yeah.
that crescendo would begin to build. Dad would turn the TV up, and I knew that the song I was going to play for him was that.
Yeah.
So, that's just to you, Dad.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. So, Andrew, where can we find Mind Your Business?
Yeah, we are on every major platform that's out there. Like you said, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, anywhere you get your streaming services, we should be on there. Check out our website. It's mindyourbusiness.libsyn.com. But if you just do a Google search for Mind Yo, that's Y-O apostrophe business, you'll find me. There is a different podcast called Mind Your Business, but he's way too serious. So
Not cool.
He's not that cool. But Mind Your Business online. And again, we're on all social media. We have a Facebook page, Instagram page. So check us out.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, we'll see you on side 2.
Where the music fades,
The conversation begins.
peace out.